Order. I call this meeting to order. This is the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs, and I'm Melissa Sheehy-Richard, the MLA for Hants West and chair of this committee. Today, we will hear from presenters regarding veteran homelessness support. And I just want to remind everybody before we get started, just to turn all your devices on to silent, if you will. And in case of emergency, please gather across the street at the Art Gallery of Nova Scotia Courtyard. I will begin by asking committee members to introduce themselves for the record by stating their name and constituency, beginning with MLA Robichaud.
Good afternoon. I'm MLA Ryan Robichaud from Clare.
Brian Wong, MLA for Waverley Fall River Beaverbank.
Nick Hilton, Yarmouth.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Damien Storylove from Bedford South.
Good afternoon. I'm Susie Hanson, the MLA for Halifax Needham. Welcome.
Paul Wozni, MLA Sackville-Cobequid. I use he, him pronouns.
Good afternoon, Derek Mumberkhead, MLA for Sydney, Member 2.
I would also like to note the presence of Legislative Counsel Philip Grassi and Legislative Committee Clerk Tamer Nusabi. So I would like to officially welcome all of you here today to the Nova Scotia Legislature. As I mentioned to some of you, the oldest legislature in the country that we're quite proud of. And I would like to begin with you guys. At first, I'll get you all to introduce yourselves one at a time, and then we'll do our opening remarks after that, beginning with Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Smith, and I am Executive Lead for Homelessness and Supportive Housing with the Department of Opportunities and Social Development.
Hello, my name is Belinda Seagram. I am the Executive Director of Landing Strong and a registered clinical psychologist.
Hello, my name is Deborah Eaton, and I'm the Director of Corporate Services at Landing Strong.
Good afternoon, Dave Keedwell, Director General of Intergovernmental Programs at Veteran Affairs Canada.
Good afternoon, Moussa Drami, Acting Director, Community Engagement, Veterans Affairs Canada.
Good afternoon. I'm Debbie Lawther, the CEO and co-founder of Vets Canada.
Thank you.
I'm Sid LePage, and I'm the Director of Homelessness and Supportive Housing with Opportunities and Social Development. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Apologies. We have a full cast today. So at this point, I would invite Ms. Smith to bring her opening remarks.
Good afternoon again, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you very much for the invitation to be here with you this afternoon. As I shared, my name is Jamie Smith, and I'm Executive Lead for Homelessness and Supportive Housing, and with the team at Opportunities and Social Development. As you know, we work very closely with partners in community and across government at all levels to support Nova Scotians experiencing or at risk of homelessness in the province. Homelessness is a complex issue. It's bigger than one department, and it's bigger than one level of government. We work with municipalities, with our federal partners, with many other provincial departments. This includes growth and development, health and wellness, addictions and mental health, labor, skills and immigration, justice, the Provincial Housing Agency, and seniors in long-term care. And of course, we work closely with community-based organizations right across the province too. This includes organizations like Shelter Nova Scotia, the Affordable Housing Association of Nova Scotia, ADSM, Open Arms, Cape Breton Community Housing Association, Mi'kmaq Native Friendship Center, 902 Man Up, Akuma, Phoenix Youth Services, and many, many others, and without whom we simply cannot do this work. We work together to ensure that our response to homelessness in Nova Scotia is housing-focused, comprehensive, trauma-informed, culturally responsive, and sustainable, while keeping people, families, communities at the center of it all. I'd like to acknowledge the contributions of military members and veterans in Nova Scotia and across the province and across the country who have served and continue to serve. As Canadians, we ask a lot of those who serve our country, and we are committed to ensuring veterans have access to the housing and homelessness supports that they need. The work we do at the provincial level complements that of our federal colleagues at Veterans Affairs. We create infrastructure with supports and services available to all Nova Scotians experiencing homelessness, including veterans, while Veterans Affairs brings the specialized veteran-focused services. Together, this ensures veterans are supported both as Nova Scotians and as former service members. Since 2021, our department has increased funding for homelessness by an astounding 1,300%. This significant increase reflects our deep commitment to making real, lasting change. In the last year, we've been working across government and with our partners, with communities and institutions to create innovative solutions that meet the needs of Nova Scotians and communities. We've created more than 700 new supportive housing units across the province. This includes innovative projects like Tiny Home Community in Lower Sackville, which is the first of its kind in Nova Scotia, and that's for up to 70 people. We've opened the Rose in downtown Halifax with ADSOM for up to 18 families and children. It offers safer shelter, essential services, and personalized care to women, children, and families. And we are going to see the addition of 6 units coming online this fall. At the end, the Rose will be home to more than 80 people. We've created The Bridge, a transitional shelter with integrated healthcare and other services. We've also created more than 200 new permanent shelter spaces in the communities across the province for emergency and short-term stays. Sorry, that's almost 200. And we have created an additional 200 at shelter villages across the province too. We've opened 5 shelter villages in Sydney, Kentville, and HRM to meet the immediate need for those transitional accommodations I've just mentioned. We've invested millions of dollars to support the incredible work of our service providers, which includes outreach, housing support, and diversion funding, in addition to the creation of sheltering and housing solutions. That's in addition to the work led by our colleagues at Growth and Development and the Provincial Housing Agency, which has helped to create and protect more than 3,000 affordable units in Nova Scotia, plus thousands more in public housing. We have made significant progress, but there is still work ahead. We continue to work closely with partners to ensure all Nova Scotians have a safe place to call home, and with Veterans Affairs Canada, Vets Canada, and Landing Strong to ensure veterans have access to all of the supports available to them. Because when we invest in housing supports and housing, we invest in people. And when we invest in people, we build stronger, healthier, and more resilient communities for all Nova Scotians. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm looking forward to participating in this really important conversation and to learning more from my fellow witnesses as well. Thank you.
Dr. Seagram.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I always welcome the opportunity to speak about our veterans and particularly our homelessness project because it's something I'm extremely passionate about. We have been very fortunate in receiving money from Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada, which has allowed us to take a more proactive approach to supporting our veterans getting out of the crises or the circumstances they can find themselves in. Because let's face it, homelessness isn't the problem. It's a symptom of a series of larger issues. And at Landing Strong, we're committed to taking a comprehensive look at the challenges facing our veterans and their family members and coming up with creative outside-of-the-box solutions. And we've really had to go outside of the box for a number of them. And I would really welcome the opportunity to give examples, some case scenarios later if we have the time. We start off by doing an intake assessment, and it is a comprehensive assessment of needs. For most of our people, many of them do not yet have recognized mental health conditions, and many of them need it. So we set them up with a comprehensive psychological assessment so we can get them fast-tracked for services and supports if they have a recognized condition with Veterans Affairs Canada. We immediately take a look at their immediate needs, whether it's shelter, food security, safety, and come up with we want to come up with longer-term plans and creative long-term solutions. We don't want to just put them somewhere and find them housing because we know that's likely to not be sustainable over the long term. So looking at the multi-systemic factors that contribute to homelessness, whether it's unaddressed mental health needs. Perhaps there's a need for psychiatric medication. Maybe it's substance use. Might be mental health of family members. Might be disruptive pets. There could be so many different things that can contribute. So we want to look at that bigger picture. In the year and a half since we have received the funding, we've offered support to 86 individuals. 37 of them are veterans, and we have a few first responders in that. They're funded by a different stream, and their family members. So it is many spouses, children, dependents who are very much part of this. Whether they're people living in campers, we have a young mom who's living in a car for 2 years. We have a fellow who's living in a burned out house. And you know, our first thoughts are, first of all, let's get him a porta potty. Let's get filtered water. Let's get some immediate things settled so we can start coming up with these longer term solutions. But certainly addressing the mental health is very, very important. So we offer these wraparound services, whether it's the assessment, it's ongoing case management, it's advocacy, and there is very much a need for advocacy to help these folks manage the systems that they find themselves in, and an ongoing support. We set them up with individual counseling. And when they're well enough, and if they're well enough, and if they're safe to do so, we'll bring them into our intensive day treatment programs. And we have a whole slate of intensive programs. Most people who come through Landing Strong will do up to 150 hours of clinical programs. And there's an opportunity for ongoing support in the community through our Community Connections group or maintaining health programs. Some of the areas we might address in our intensive programs would be emotions management, trauma recovery, resiliency, healthy living, identity and transition, figuring out who they are beyond the uniform, making sure they have healthy lifestyles that set them up for success, mind, body health and recovery, managing chronic pain that so many of them will face, and looking at addictions programming. We're very excited. We also have an intensive 5-day, well, it's actually a 10-day program, 2 5-day retreats for women who have experienced military sexual trauma. And that's been a huge success. And we've had wait lists for the program for the next cohort even before. We haven't even had to advertise it after the first one. People are coming and signing up for it. And that's been beautiful to see that. There's a very powerful intersection, unfortunately, between women who have experienced military sexual trauma and subsequent homelessness. So we're really excited to be serving this high-need, high-risk population. And, you know, naturally we're looking at, we had some funding as well to look at offering similar programs for men in the military who have experienced sexual trauma, military sexual trauma, and unfortunately that's not a small number. And really trying to reduce the stigma and allowing people to come out and get the support they need. So I guess I'd like to just share some of the signs of success for me. We had a recent artisanal fair with our annual community celebration, and we had veterans setting up artistic booths, and many are finding their voice through expression with artistic pursuits. And we had a huge turnout with our veteran community for that. They were on the planning committee, and they're very proudly displaying their wares. And many of them wanted to be in the newspaper. We had a float in our local parade, and we had people, at first they said, oh, we're not going to be seen doing that. But suddenly it became the cool thing to do. And we had quite a number coming out, building the float, being in the parade. So again, this removal of the stigma or shame regarding injury and a pride of service for their country. So I think that's probably my time, but I'll thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Mr. Keedwell.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee, guests. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about veteran homelessness and the supports available to those who have served our country. Veteran sacrifices have shaped the Canada we know today. It is our collective responsibility to ensure they are supported in return. Each year, approximately 8,200 members of the Canadian Armed Forces transition to life after service. While many do so with ease, others face challenges. Though estimates vary, current data shows approximately 2,000 veterans experience homelessness over the course of a year in Canada. Like many Canadians in similar situations, veterans often cite contributing factors like health challenges, substance use, and marital and family breakdowns as contributing factors to experiencing homelessness. In addition, veterans report unique challenges, including difficult transitioning out of military and military-related trauma. These distinct experiences call for a tailored response to their specific needs, built around the particular challenges they face. Veteran Affairs Canada has taken meaningful steps to support veterans in their transition to post-service life. Since 2018, the department has introduced several key programs. One would be the Veteran Emergency Fund, which provides emergency financial support to veterans, their families, and survivors facing urgent and unexpected situations. The Veterans Organization Emergency Support Fund, which is a one-time pandemic response fund for veterans, including those that assist veterans experiencing homelessness. The Income Replacement Benefit, which simplified compensation for veterans facing economic impacts due to service-related health issues. Mental health benefits, which offer immediate coverage for mental health treatment upon application for disability benefits. And the Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund, which has awarded more than $10.3 million to 29 projects dedicated to supporting veterans experiencing homelessness. Through conversations with veterans, community organizations, and educational institutions, we learned that equity-deserving groups, including women, Indigenous to us LGBTQI+, Black and racialized veterans, face unique barriers when it comes to accessing homelessness supports. These discussions deepen our understanding of the diverse experiences within the veteran community and how best to serve those with intersecting challenges. Veteran Affairs case managers work directly with veterans to develop personalized plans to help meet their specific needs, connecting them to the health, housing, and local services. Collaboration with community organizations helps ensure the veterans have timely access to the support they need. Veteran Affairs is actively engaging with homeless-serving organizations across Canada to ensure veterans experiencing homelessness are identified and supported with the respect and care they deserve. We encourage the use of a veteran identifier in a screening process to ensure veterans are connected with appropriate resources. Veteran Affairs works closely with partners and stakeholders such as the Royal Canadian Legion's Leave the Streets Behind program. We support and promote localized initiatives such as the Military Veteran Wellness Program, which provides increased training and awareness opportunities for law enforcement to assist veterans in crisis. In Nova Scotia, the RCMP has implemented the program, as well as the Amherst and Cape Breton Regional Police Services. Notably, work is underway to adopt this program in Halifax, Kentville, and Truro. Veteran Affairs works hand in hand with community organizations for the Veteran Homeless Program that was launched in April of 2023 and is led by Housing and Infrastructure Canada. This program currently delivers $72.9 million over 5 years to community organizations to provide rent supplements and wraparound supports for veterans at risk or experiencing homelessness. Additionally, the program provides up to $6.2 million to fund research on veteran homelessness and support capacity building. I am pleased to say that the two Nova Scotia-based organizations, both here today, Veterans Emergency Transition Services and Landing Strong, are among those providing support to veterans with funding received through the VHP. Organizations like theirs bring deep community knowledge and strong relationships that are vital to reaching veterans wherever they may be. We know that no single department or organization can end homelessness alone, including veteran homelessness. It will take work and collaboration between federal, provincial governments, and community organizations such as Vets Canada and Landing Strong. Together, we can ensure veterans have access to safe and affordable housing and other supports they may need in their lives post-service. Thank you very much.
Ms. Lawther.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation to discuss veterans' homelessness in Nova Scotia from our perspective and to speak about the work that we do to support veterans who are homeless and those who are on a trajectory toward homelessness. Vets Canada was founded in 2010 here in HRM after we stumbled upon a veteran who was experiencing homelessness. That interaction identified a significant gap in services available for unhoused veterans. In fact, at that time, the only veteran-centric resource available was Veterans Affairs Canada. In 2010, no one was talking about veteran homelessness. We started as a small group of people trying to support veterans in our community. organically grew into a registered charity supporting veterans nationwide who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. To date, we've supported thousands of veterans nationally. We aim to provide immediate, on-the-ground assistance to Canadian Armed Forces and RCMP veterans. We recognize that every veteran's story is different, so we tailor our support to meet the unique needs of each veteran. Most often, we offer veterans assistance in finding and maintaining housing through financial support in the form of rent payments, overdue utility payments. We also provide grocery cards, gas cards, furniture, and household items to newly housed veterans. We can also assist veterans with tools needed to secure employment. We work closely with Veterans Affairs case managers. In fact, they account for close to 80% of our referrals. The relationship with VAC case managers works well because as the government department, they are limited to their legislated programs and benefits, and we have the flexibility to fill in the gaps beyond what they can do. I like to say that they are inside the box and we live on the outside of the box. Last year, we began receiving funding from the Government of Canada through the new Veterans Homelessness Program administered by Housing, Infrastructure and Communities Canada. This funding enables us to continue our daily work, and in addition, we can offer rent supplements to eligible veterans. Since receiving this funding in June 2024, we have 41 veterans across the country in receipt of rent supplements, with 14 of those being here in Nova Scotia. The last time I was here in May of 2022, I left you with some statistics regarding the veterans we were supporting in Nova Scotia at that time. I'd like to share the updated statistics with you now. Today in Nova Scotia, 17% of the veterans that we are currently supporting were experiencing absolute homelessness. In 2022, that number was 8%. 25% are emergency sheltered. That's up from 13% in 2022. 26% are provisionally accommodated, up from 15% in 2022. In 2022, 54% of our veterans were at risk of homelessness. Today, that number has actually dropped to 32%. 10% of the veterans we supported in 2022 were securely housed, meaning they reached out to us for reasons other than housing. Today, that number is down to 8%. I also shared in 2022 that veterans in Nova Scotia accounted for 19% of our nationwide caseload. Today, Nova Scotian veterans account for 24% of the caseload. Earlier this year, that number was up to roughly 30%. That paints a bit of a grim picture, so I'll share some more positive happenings since my last visit here. In March of this year, we opened a veterans food pantry in Dartmouth. While the fact that veterans would need to access a food bank isn't positive, being able to do so in a place specifically for them, where they are served by people who understand them and don't judge them, is a more positive aspect. Our food pantry is modeled after a grocery store, allowing veterans to choose what they want to eat. We believe that method to be more dignifying than just being handed a pre-packed box of food. We've only soft launched the pantry, meaning we haven't formally announced it yet. However, between opening in March and the end of August, we've already distributed 3,085 pounds of food to 88 veterans. In January 2025, the Halifax Veterans Affairs Office, in partnership with Vets Canada, the Royal Canadian Legion, and Landing Strong, launched the Veteran Housing Insecurity Collective, a stakeholder table focused on exploring, understanding, resolving, and preventing housing insecurity among veterans. I firmly believe that we all have to work together if we are going to make an impact on eliminating veterans' homelessness. No single organization can be all things for all people, so this must be a collaborative effort. In addition to the stakeholder table, VAC Halifax has implemented other notable changes, one being that they now have a team of 3 case managers specifically dedicated to the files of homeless veterans. At our suggestion, they submitted a request and were approved to spend 1/2 day per month working from our offices. So far, we've only had each of the 3 case managers with us once, but it has definitely been time well spent. We're very grateful to VAC for making this possible. The changes we've seen since 2010 have been immense. We've evolved from 0 non-government resources available to an abundance of veteran-serving organizations. We now have a federal government program dedicated to veteran homelessness. We have come a long way, but the work is far from over. During this affordability crisis that we are all navigating, the work has never been more complex, but it has never been more critical. In closing, I thank this committee for inviting me here today, and more importantly, thank you for continuing your focus on this topic.
Thank you. We will now move into the questioning of witnesses period of the committee. And the way the mics will work is the member will ask a question, and I ask that you wait until I acknowledge you, and Ledge TV will make your light go red. So the first round of questions with the NDP Caucus for 20 minutes, followed by the Liberals for 10 minutes, and the PCs for 30 minutes. I would open it up to MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I thank each and every one of you coming here today. I do agree it is a complex and critical issue. And, our veterans have served our country, and we should do the same, and respecting them with proper housing and making sure they have the supports that they need. So thank you for doing the work on the ground. My question will be for the Department of Opportunities and Social Development. 87% of homeless veterans in Halifax are considered to be chronically homeless. Why hasn't the provincial government acted urgently to ensure stable, secure housing for those who have served our country?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you for that question, MLA Hanson. And so we have developed over 700 supportive housing units and hundreds of transitional and shelter units over the past 4 years, and it has been an increase of almost 1,300% in those investments. And we have also been working very closely with our partners at Veteran Affairs and others in terms of ensuring that we have the right supports in place so that all Nova Scotians, including those who have been in service or veterans themselves, can access those services too. And Madam Chair, I would like to invite Sid LePage, who is with me, to speak more directly to how some of that connection with veterans in our communities has happened. Thank you.
Ms. LePage.
Thank you. So it's really important to know that although we don't have programs that are directed directly to people that have served our country, all of our programs are accessible for anyone experiencing homelessness, including those that have served. We often will have the connections through our service providers. So our service providers across the province, we have over 50 of them, do the direct service to all of our populations. So if an individual experiencing homelessness or risk either contacts an emergency shelter or a housing support worker or a trustee program, or connects with our outreach workers that are through the 6 communities of the province, and there is identification that they are veterans, they automatically will navigate them to Veterans Affairs and Vets Canada. So we try to make sure that individuals, anyone experiencing homelessness, has access to housing and emergency accommodations. And so we are working very hard, and as Ms. Smith said, we have increased our funding significantly, and we also have created 700 new supportive housing units. And if an individual fits that unit criteria, whether or not they served, they would be considered for that unit, and it is to help them transition and gain skills to move into market or independent housing.
MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. We just heard from Ms. Lawther in her opening remarks that Nova Scotian veterans account for a higher percentage of their caseloads today than what they did in 2022, which I was sitting in that meeting as well. And I'm just curious to know, what is your department planning to do to reverse the trend of veterans experiencing homelessness, i.e. could possibly be earmarking specific units for veterans in our province in Nova Scotia? So I'm just wondering, is there a plan in place to possibly do that so that we can have some priority for our veterans in Nova Scotia?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you for that follow-up.
Oh,
thank you very much for that follow-up question. So we have been very fortunate in the province to work closely with a number of different organizations, and that includes our partners in the federal government with Veterans Affairs, as well as some of the colleagues here at the table and others who have those specific expertise in ensuring that they can support veterans and those who have served in uniform and understand most uniquely what those needs are. Those relationships also happen between our community-based organizations or service providers in homelessness and supportive housing, and we will continue to build and strengthen those relationships with them. We currently have not had any proposals coming forward specifically for veterans, but we will be taking the conversations away from today and the relationships that we're building through this committee appearance when we go back. Thank you.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is also another question for OSD. Many of the existing programs focus on helping veterans who are already homeless. What supports exist to prevent veterans from becoming homeless in the first place? Can you elaborate on that?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you again for that important question around how we continue to work together to prevent veterans' homelessness. And again, I would refer to some of my colleagues who are here at the table today who have those very specific expertise and understanding what the context is in relationship to that individual or the family becoming homeless who's also a veteran or a person who has served in uniform. And of course, many of the programs that we do have available, whether that's through diversion supports, are available to all Nova Scotians. But first, we would want to ensure through that relationship with service provider and engaging through outreach, for example, through housing support, that they are making the appropriate connections with Veterans Affairs, with the appropriate service provision with those expertise, and then they're able to get access into those programs. But again, all of the programs that we do have would also be open to them as well.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Early on in the introductions, it was mentioned that it's bigger than one department, and we know this. I mean, throughout our many discussions when it comes to housing, that it is bigger than just one. And this is also to OSD. Veterans report that not having enough money for housing is the top cause of their homelessness. Why hasn't the provincial government taken the necessary steps to reduce housing costs, like creating real rent control, discussing that with the housing minister and residential tenancies person, ending the fixed term lease loophole and protecting renters? We hear from folks every day that are telling us that these are the reasons why they're not able to have housing or are at risk of homelessness. Why aren't we working with departments to be able to close those types of gaps?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you again, Emily Hanson. So we do, as I mentioned, work very closely with a number of other departments, including the Department of Growth and Development, and understanding the context around access to new affordable housing units, for example, or public housing. As I mentioned, there have been several thousand units that have come on board over the past 3 to 4 years, I've mentioned previously. So I would ask that we would defer those questions specifically around some of those items related to those caps to that department. But what I can say is that we do have those conversations, and we're exploring what those things might look like.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that. My question is for Vets Canada. Ms. Lawther, in your opening remarks, you informed us that the number of Nova Scotian veterans who are absolutely homeless today is higher than what it was 3 years ago. From your perspective, what are the biggest barriers veterans face while trying to find safe and affordable housing in Nova Scotia?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for that question. So, what we are being told by the veterans that we support, it's a number of issues that are at play. One is the cost of renting is astronomical right now. As an example, we have a veteran right now in New Minas who is paying $3,360 in rent each month. So that is a big issue, but the other issue is also lack of inventory. There just is no housing available. So those, I would say, are the two main issues. Aside from that, there's the normal mental health issues, addictions, and a lot of just difficulty transitioning from a life of service where their support system was their colleagues within the military. So when they release, they lose that social support network. So that does have an impact as well.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I would ask, what provincial policy changes would make your work easier?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you. So you mentioned earlier about having, housing specific to veterans. I think that would be beneficial. I can tell you that right now there is an organization called Affirmative Ventures who are in the process of building housing in Dartmouth. It is 30 one-bedroom units. Their intention is to have 10 of those units for folks experiencing mental health issues. 30 are allotted for seniors, and 10 would be allotted for veterans. And they've asked us to come on board to provide the wraparound supports for those 10 veterans. So I think more housing would definitely help.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Vets Canada and Landing Strong Cooperative. In another committee on housing and homelessness, we heard from government officials that the fixed-term lease loophole has allowed some landlords to bypass the rent cap. Have you heard from your clients that fixed-term leases are a barrier to stable housing?
Was it Mr. Kendall or was it Ms. Lawther? Okay, I'll let Ms. Lawther.
Okay. Sorry, can I ask you to repeat that question?
Emily Hanson, with 9 minutes, Emily Momberket.
Yes, so I'm just basically wondering, have you heard from your clients that fixed-term leases are a barrier to stable housing?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you. Not necessarily that it's a barrier to stable housing, but there have been some issues at play. And we also have some veterans who are renting what they can afford to rent, and so sometimes they are victims of less than ethical landlords, I guess I would say.
Dr. Seagram.
We haven't necessarily seen fixed-term leases as being as much of a barrier as finding rental accommodations that are adequate and not substandard, that are safe. I would say looking at the quality of housing is a bigger thing. Rent evictions is huge. And many of our veterans are living in very substandard conditions, but hesitant to raise concerns with landlords for fear of being evicted if they're lucky enough to have apartments that are lower rent costs. So I think the bigger issue is how long they can hold on to the leases that they have and whether or not they feel safe in the apartments that they have. Some of the lower rental income places are not necessarily safe, and that's a significant concern, particularly if you're dealing with people who are struggling with operational stress injuries, and safety and trust are already issues.
Emily Hanson.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chair. This is for Vets Canada. Your ground support program helps veterans with many aspects of housing and affordability, including eviction prevention and others that you'd mentioned earlier on. Your view, in your view, how would increasing renter protections and creating real rent control help prevent evictions?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you. I think that rent control would be very beneficial. We do have veterans right now who are in positions where I can think of one exactly right now, who there are renovations being done in his building. He was given the opportunity to stay and they would not renovate his unit, but now they've changed that and they are offering him a new lease when his original lease has not expired. So I think there could be some better rent controls in place.
Emily Hanson, I just asked that when you ask direct questions in Veterans Affairs Canada, and then there's Veterans Emergency Transition Services Canada. Thank you. Emily Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This would be as well to Ms. Lawther. Would your rent supplement program go further if rents in Nova Scotia were properly regulated?
Ms. Lawther.
I think maybe they would. The criteria that we follow for to approve those rent supplements, those are based on median rents as are set up by CMHC. With those median rents, I guess the price of rent will impact those median rents down the road, but right now we are working with data from last year. So the median rents that we're using are not 2025 amounts.
MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For Veterans Affairs Canada, how is Veterans Affairs coordinating with the province of Nova Scotia to make sure veterans don't fall through the cracks between federal and provincial housing and health systems?
Mr. Kendall? Or Keedwell, sorry.
Could I ask her just to repeat the question one more time? Sorry.
MLA Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just wondering how Veterans Affairs is coordinating with the province of Nova Scotia to make sure veterans don't fall through the cracks between federal and provincial housing and health systems.
Mr. Keedwell.
You want to talk? Okay, sorry. Musa will talk.
Mr. Drumme.
You can add on if you want. Thank you for the question, MLA Hanson. So Veterans Affairs Canada conduct transition interviews whenever we have a referral of a veteran that is about to release from the military, and that is conducted by our veteran service agents. So we work collaboratively with transition services from the military to conduct a screening with a veteran and identify some of the risk that the veteran could be at in terms of homelessness. And we have resources available within Veterans Affairs Canada, and we do work with partners as well to make sure they're referred to the right resources so they don't fall under that situation of homelessness or being at risk of homelessness.
MLA Hanson.
So I just kind of want a little bit of clarity. Is Veterans Affairs Canada working closely with our province to be able to figure out, how we can fill in those gaps between our veterans who may possibly be experiencing homelessness, and as well we were hearing that there's a lot of mental health services that are needed at times. So I'm just curious to know, is there a good working relationship? Are we able to really kind of figure out some of those things that we need when it comes to health care and housing for our veterans?
Mr. Drumme.
Thank you, MLA Hanson, for the question. So we currently have a team within Nova Scotia, the Veteran Homelessness team, composed of case managers, nurses that actually work directly with different stakeholders, including the province and other groups, to come together and find solutions when it comes to homelessness.
MLA Hanson with just under 2 minutes. MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Chair. I want to ask this question, direct this question to Ms. Lawther. We've heard that Nova Scotia currently doesn't have in development or have built any units specifically for veterans, open to considering, but nothing built or in the queue. You actually appeared before this committee in 2022, and you relayed to us that your organization had built transitional units for homeless veterans in Edmonton with funding from the provincial government of Alberta. I'm wondering if you can provide us with an update on this initiative and how that's going.
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for that question. So that project with the government of Alberta, we didn't build the units. They bought an apartment building, and they were specifically dedicated for veterans. Unfortunately, due to a change of government, that the project completely ended. The new government that came in decided that it was not a worthy project. So it's actually ended, I'm sad to say.
MLA Wozni.
I'm not sure that I have much time left, but on the record, I'd like to say boo hiss to the government of Danielle for making that move. That potentially is a bright spot and a template for positive change elsewhere in Canada, and see it terminated in such a fashion is disgraceful. I'll cede the rest of my time to my colleague.
All right, MLA Momberkat.
Does the NDP have any time left, or is it my turn now? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone who's here presenting from the committee. I have 10 minutes, so I'm going to try to jam as much as I can into the 10 minutes, but really it's about the relationship between the provincial government and our veterans, and you know, I served as on the Veteran Affairs Committee for a number of years here, and you know, I always go back to what was said today about there are many factors that bring people, unfortunately, to homelessness. And I will say this about the veterans that I know in my community, and our office supports veterans in a number of ways, whether it's just through the local community at navigating the benefits that they're eligible to receive under Veteran Affairs, which I'll ask as a question specific to that. But one of the key factors that I always found with veterans is, you know, these are folks that are serving our country. They're very determined, they're very motivated and proud to wear that uniform, and they serve our country each and every day in the best and the worst of times. And one of the things that always stands out for me is the skills that they learn through that journey of serving our country, and they're very talented, whether they're engineers, whether they have various certifications, whether they're carpenters, the list goes on and on and on. So for me, I guess my first question is what can, and it could be for anyone, what can the government of Nova Scotia be doing to support those veterans that have specific skill sets that would help them transition into the workforce more quickly? That's one of the best barriers we could break down to help people fight homelessness, is that you have people who are served our country that are very talented, that have very particular skill sets in many cases, but maybe finding it very difficult to get into the workplace. So what can we be doing as a government? What can we be doing as a province to help those veterans transition?
Ms. Lawther?
Thank you for that question. As far as the provincial government, I know that the federal government at one point did have a priority hiring program, and I'm actually not 100% sure if that still exists, but if provincial governments had something similar, I think that would be very helpful. I know that Veterans Affairs does have an education and training benefit, which helps veterans coming out to either get retrained or upgrade their training, and I think that's very beneficial. But on the provincial level, I think that, you know, even a campaign to encourage employers to hire veterans, because I will say sometimes there's some stigma involved. You know, when people hear that you're a veteran, some people, you know, love that. And then there are others who think, oh, you're a veteran, well, maybe you have some mental health issues, so, you know, we'll pass on that. So I don't know, I think eliminating that stigma and maybe some priority hiring programs would help.
Dr. Seagram.
I think it's an excellent question. We were very fortunate to receive funds from ACOA a number of years ago and did a workforce reintegration program, and we learned a great deal. Many of our veterans had no problems finding work initially, but knowing how to work within the workforce was the challenge. They were used to kind of fast-track, mission-oriented, all-or-nothing, fast-paced, burnt themselves out, had difficulty saying no, and were struggling within short periods of time. And during the course of this program, our initial goal, we had set up many sites within Nova Scotia where they could come into the program and transition right into the workforce. And our experience was the vast majority actually needed to go back and do the foundational mental health programs and transitional programs so they could get a more solid foundation under their feet. Most of them were in a rush to get to work, and by slowing down, ultimately we were able to speed up their recovery and their progression.
MLA Momberkat.
And thank you, Madam Chair. And that's really a big takeaway for me, Madam Chair, and I think for the committee today, is that, you know, this topic is generally, of course, it's about homelessness. And as I said, we deal with a lot of different cases that come to the office in Sydney and beyond. I've been in the position now for a decade. But that's sort of that ability to transition from the military to the workforce, where, you know, there was a big conversation, and some changes have been made, Madam Speaker, around certification. You know, military personnel couldn't drive certain equipment on, they could drive it during their service if they were in another country, but couldn't drive it on a Canadian highway. So like some of those, and we need trades, and we need folks to want to enter the trades and enter those particular skill sets that this province needs. So, I think if anything comes out of the committee today, I hope that the government looks at the ways that they can help break down those barriers around supporting people transition into the workforce, these highly determined, skilled residents of this province who proudly have worn a uniform and continue to represent our country. So that was my first question. I don't know how much time I have left, but my next question was around Veteran Affairs benefits. So we deal a lot in our office around supporting and navigating and helping veterans go through that process of getting what is rightfully theirs, benefits that as a result of serving our country. And I guess my question is around the homelessness pieces. Should there be something changed around that to provide funding specific to veterans who are transitioning from serving our country into helping cover some of the costs so that they can find that first place, that they can help cover the daily costs?
Was it to Ms. Lawther or Vets Canada?
That could be. I just kind of left it general. It's more of a conversational than a question asker.
I will recognize Mr. Drummond.
Thank you, MLA, for the question. Quickly, before going back to that question, I wanted to highlight that Veterans Affairs Canada has a program called National Veterans Employment Strategy that works actually in partnership with the province, public services, and private sector, Marines, in order to allow those veterans releasing from the military to get a decent job. And Debbie mentioned we also have the education and training benefit that allows, during the transition, that allows a veteran actually to go back to school in order to enhance their career. And I think one of the things that will be important as well is the recognition of their trade. You serve for 10, 15, 20 years in the military. When you release, how is that valuable in the civilian life? That is also very important when it comes to province collaborating with us. Going back to your question that I forgot now. Yeah, veteran benefits. So I was saying earlier to Emily Hansen, when a veteran is releasing from the military, we make sure they understand all of the programs that are available to them. That includes disability benefits, it includes income replacement benefits, and also some of the support like emergency funds for a veteran that is releasing and is not entirely sure where they're going to be living when it comes to homelessness or housing. That can go up to $10,000 actually to help them, one-time payment to allow them to get a decent place to stay instead of going to a shelter or surf couching. The other programs that we have as well, there's no specific program dedicated to homeless veterans or veterans at risk of being homeless, but we do have all the programs available for the same veterans, whether you are at risk of being homeless or not.
Dr. Seagram.
I think this is a really critical question because we need to really track the progression of the veteran through the system, from first reaching out, being able to get speedy access to a clinical assessment if that's what's needed. There's the waiting time for that submission of the comprehensive psychological assessment to recognition that they might have a condition, and that could take 6 months, a year, up to 2 years. And we've run into some recent stumbling blocks where we've been fast-tracking veterans, getting them the speedy assessments, getting it in, recognize their condition, and then there's a policy with joint policy with Veterans Affairs and PVCRS that's been a recent stumbling block. That although we've completed this fast-tracked assessment to try to get them off the street, we're being told no, that assessment is actually not valid because they didn't choose the provider, even though it's been conducted by someone who is a PVCRS clinician. So I think those policies are put in place to prevent conflict of interest, and quite rightly so. At the same time, it's not recognizing the specific need to fast track some of our homelessness folks. And for many of them, where the injuries are so severe, issues of trust and are very difficult. So we might have worked very, very hard and doing outreach to get them to do the assessment. And many of them might have told their stories before and not been believed. If we've done that, and then we have to go back to them and say, it's not considered legitimate, you have to go and agree to do it again with another clinician, that's a big blow for our vulnerable populations.
Emily Mombercat with a minute.
With a minute? Okay, so I probably don't, that's, I really don't have time for a Q&A, I only have a minute, but I'll just say, it's very important, it seems like there are things that we can be doing to really speed up the process for that transition, right? And there are certain aspects, because the veterans support, a lot of it comes federally too as well, and that relationship between the feds and the provinces is critical. So with the 10 minutes I had, they were the two questions that I really had, is around how can we help support those highly skilled veterans who we know are coming out of service, that we can transition quickly and in the right path to the workforce, and also around those veteran benefits, because this is stuff that's coming out of the office. These questions are coming from veterans at home because they knew I was coming to the committee today. So I appreciate them sending me the questions, and I'm happy to do whatever I can in my capacity to help advocate for some of the supports that we can do with the province. Thank you, Matt.
And now we'll move to the PC Caucus with 30 minutes, beginning with MLA Stolberg.
Well, thank you all again for being here. You've answered the questions very well, and I just have a couple of questions. The first one is to the Veterans Affairs Canada. Nova Scotia, as we all know, has some of the highest concentrations of veterans as a percentage living here. Are you looking at that, meaning for homeless supports and other supports, to specifically tailor programs for Nova Scotia, given the higher concentrations that are proportionally higher here?
Mr. Drame. No. Mr. Keedwell.
Thank you very much. Currently at the moment, Veteran Affairs, we're working with both organizations on either side of me through the Veteran Homeless Program, which has put what I would consider a considerable amount of money right across Canada. I think it's close to $80 million. I'm not sure of the exact funding that's come to either of these organizations, but we're using that money to tailor the programming that can help them both with the Housing First and the wraparound services. To answer your question directly, I don't think we're doing anything specifically because there's a lot of veterans right across Canada. I understand its proportion. It may be more here as a population, but there are quite a few veterans, again, in Alberta, in Montreal, in Ontario as well. So I think, through the Veteran Homeless Program, I think a lot of money has been injected, close to $80 million. And that, I think, is going a long way, and I would allow either one of my, both Debbie or Dr. Seagram or Deborah here to elaborate on that.
Mr. Drame.
Thank you for the question, MLA. To add to what my colleague just said, in Nova Scotia we have, so each area office within Veterans Affairs Canada has a dedicated team. So in Nova Scotia we have a dedicated team on homelessness, and previous to this role, my new role, I was area director for Nova Scotia and managed a team of 120 that included case managers actually that were dedicated and specifically working on veterans homelessness within Nova Scotia. Currently, you count about 33,000 veterans within Nova Scotia, and we currently have identified between 44 and 50 veterans either at absolute homelessness or at risk of being homeless. And the team is working in partnership with our colleagues right around the table here to reduce that number and to end homelessness actually in Nova Scotia. So we do take into account the specific needs, whether that is within Halifax or, for instance, we have 2 case managers specifically for Cape Brighton that are actually building partnership as we are doing in Halifax to resolve the same problem. Thank you.
Emily Stolberg.
Thank you for that. And as a follow-up, I think to what Mr. Keedwell had indicated earlier, spending, amounts of money across, whether it's Halifax, Calgary, Vancouver, Montreal, with all the investments you've made into the homelessness program and other programs, do you have any measures in place to kind of track and see how the money's been spent and how many veterans have actually, transitioned into, stable housing or stable jobs, to see where, what worked and what didn't work?
Mr. Drame.
Yeah, okay. So at the national level, I can't really tell you exactly what our success story or how many veterans have transitioned from homelessness to having a stable housing. But in Nova Scotia, I have those numbers. I can either share with you or go through what I have here actually. So I have numbers from August 29, 2024 to May 15, 2025, where we've had 31 veterans successfully resolve their homelessness. That's the number I can give you today. And you have a team of 5 people doing this work within Nova Scotia. So it's a lot of work, and they dedicate their time to make sure we collaborate with partners to come to solutions. So 31 veterans.
Emily Stolberg.
I'd like to pass on to the...
Emily Robichaud.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone. This question is for Vets Canada. Could you explain how your organization builds relationships with landlords to secure housing for veterans?
Mr. Drame.
Oh, I heard for Vets Canada as well.
Oh. Sorry, apologies. Ms. Lawther?
Sure. Thank you. Can you just repeat that question?
Emily Robichaud.
Yes, thank you. Could you please explain how your organization builds relationships with landlords in order to secure housing for veterans?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for the question. So we have a database, actually, that we keep of landlords that we've worked with in the past. And so sometimes we will advocate for veterans. We know that right now, as I said earlier, the inventory of housing is very low. And so sometimes when a veteran is applying for housing, they are one of many that are applying for that same unit. So sometimes we will step in and reach out to the landlord and try to explain to them, all of the benefits of having this particular veteran as their tenant. So really it's relationships that we've already had established in the past 15 years of doing this work, but it's just a lot of advocacy, really.
Emily Robichaud.
Thank you. And to continue with Ms. Lawther, beyond housing, your organization provides navigation and connections to health and social services. From what you can see on the ground, are there systematic barriers that continue to push veterans into homelessness?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for that. I think not necessarily barriers that push them into homelessness. I think that the prevalence of mental health issues among the veteran community plays a big part. And as I said earlier, the lack of social support, you wouldn't think that would be really important, but it is when we have veterans that come to us that have nobody, especially those who are experiencing mental health issues or addictions. As you can imagine, their family relationships have broken down, and so that does present a barrier. The social support, I would say, is also a factor.
Emily Wong.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for being here and taking on our questions. It's learning a lot today. I just want to point out that Nova Scotia, we are the only province that actually has a Veterans Affairs Committee, because Veterans Affairs is strictly falls under federal jurisdiction. However, provincially, we do support the programming. We do support nonprofits. We support the things that you do. And we talked about work transitions. I do know veterans that have gone through the helmet to hats, or hats to helmets program that have gotten into the skilled trades and are working right here in Nova Scotia. So those are amazing programs. I think it's very difficult to separate mental health and homelessness. I think the program Landing Strong is right on the button, where you have to have those wraparound services for veterans and others. What we offer in Nova Scotia is certainly services that we offer the greater public here. And one of the ways to solve the homeless crisis and the housing crisis is to build more homes. And Nova Scotia, under our government, has had record housing starts. We have the biggest investment in public housing in the last 20 years, and we continue to do so and continue to support. So with that, I have a question directed to Vets Canada. With your ground support for the Veterans Project, how many veterans have received rent supplements in Nova Scotia?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you. So we have 14 in Nova Scotia that are currently on rent supplements.
Emily Wong.
Thank you for that. And I understand we have a number of veterans that go through periodic states of homelessness. And could you explain exactly how housing for somebody that goes through those periodic times of homelessness to transition them into, a permanent home?
Emily Lawther.
Thank you.
I'm trying to promote you here. I keep wanting you to be a member. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
Ms. Lawther.
So are you talking about people who are cycling through homes, like being housed and then losing that housing and then being housed again? Is that my understanding?
Emily Wong.
Yes, that's exactly what it is, because I know that sometimes because of an individual situation, they may be in one location, it doesn't work out, and that's where those wraparound services really come in handy to help them navigate and help them transition. So I'm just wondering what the supports are for those people, and then also how long it would normally take to transition them to something more permanent.
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for that. So it is challenging if somebody's been housed over and over again. It doesn't make for a great reference for moving into housing. So that's challenging if somebody doesn't have good references. And as I said earlier, there are so many people applying for one unit that landlords are in a position that they can accept somebody who has a stellar credit rating and superior references. So it does leave those people who have had and lost housing over and over again. It makes it more challenging for them. Veterans that we have worked with who have lost their housing, we would step in and help them out with some temporary accommodations in the meantime. We have 3 transitional apartments at the Salvation Army that are allocated to us for veterans. So if one of those is open, we could put a veteran there while we work with them to find new housing. If there's no availability in those apartments, then we would rely on hotels while our staff works with that veteran to try to get them into new housing.
Emily Wong.
That. So my last question is for the Department of Opportunities and Social Development. So what is OSD doing to support veterans experiencing homelessness? And I'm really curious on, from that initial contact, kind of what the process is to find out what their backgrounds are, where they come from, and then what are the steps that is taken to find them a place?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you for the question, MLA Honorable Wong. And if I could begin, Madam Chair, and then I will refer back to my colleague, Ms. LePage, as well. So as I have mentioned, we work very closely with a number of partners, including some of those folks who are here at the table today. And we do not operate, as you mentioned, veteran-exclusive programs, but do rely upon those partnerships. And we do ensure that veterans are connected as quickly as possible to the services and supports of what they need. And if I could refer to Ms. LePage to speak about some of the specific work that's happening with service providers currently.
Ms. LePage.
Thank you for that question. One of the things that we're doing is making sure that the service providers who we rely very heavily on to deliver our services are made aware of the services to navigate to. So we have held information sessions with our housing support workers across the province, and we're looking at doing it again in October with the team that our witness here spoke about from Veterans Affairs for their team, so that they can make the connections face-to-face and understand when it's best to connect a person who's served to the services. We are making sure that although our data collection is not great, we're making sure that we're able to have the right questions asked so that we can really understand the scope of homelessness for the veterans. And so we're making sure that our service providers know to ask the questions, have you ever served in uniform? That will open up the door to other conversations. Veterans can, as I said earlier, can access our services, whether it's through outreach workers, through housing support, through shelters. And so it's really important to make sure that when we are supporting our service providers, that they have an awareness of the programs so that they can tailor any sort of case plan for that individual. So that would include a referral to Vets Canada, referral to Veterans Affairs. And so it's really important that we make sure that any mental health or addiction services that we may want to refer them to, that we also now link them with our partners, as you know, so that they know there's more expedient examples to get supports.
MLA Wong.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate those answers, so I'll pass the time on to my colleague, MLA Hilton.
MLA Hilton.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for being here today. I always find when I attend Veterans Committee, the work is always informative, but it's also very emotional. Coming from a family who, valued the service that, my grandfather gave during World War II, and these conversations are always impactful, and trying to make sure that I do the work that I can to remember and care for that service. So, I want to just note some of the comments that my colleagues made around, and yourselves, on the importance of building up the housing stock here in Nova Scotia, and the fact that this government has made nearly a $300 million investment since our time in taking government, in creating over 3,000 affordable units to service not just veterans, but all Nova Scotians. And so just for more understanding, and maybe to the two organizations that work in the province here more directly, what groups of veterans are most vulnerable to homelessness? For example, younger veterans, older veterans, women veterans, or those that have service-related injuries, and what specific steps are being taken to address the unique needs of these groups?
Dr. Seagram.
Certainly, female veterans are higher risk, a large number of whom have experienced military sexual trauma, and there's a cross-reference there with higher risk of homelessness. Certainly people who are struggling with substance use, people with operational stress injuries, people who are facing family breakdown. Those are all very big issues. People who are from Indigenous and First Nations communities. Certainly there's another level of alienation or isolation that can accompany that. People who are in remote or rural communities who might have a harder time accessing services would be all particularly affected.
Dr. Seagram.
Of course, as well, there are those who are from the LGBTQ2+ communities. There's a cross-sectionality there of vulnerabilities and risk factors that we have to look at very closely when deciding how to best support them.
Ms. Lawther?
Thank you. I would say that one thing that we see quite commonly is those veterans who have served less than 10 years, because then they are not entitled to a pension for their service. So that does have a great impact. And then, you know, if we go further into demographics, like Dr. Seagram just said, women are overrepresented. And I can tell you that more than 90% of the women veterans that we have supported have disclosed some form of military sexual trauma. So that is a big factor at play. And women veterans also, while they experience all of the same things as their male counterparts, most of them that we've supported are also either experiencing intimate partner violence or fleeing from intimate partner violence, and they also have children at play. So it makes things a lot more difficult. There's more factors there, but I would say for us, women are overly represented.
Emily Hilton.
Thank you. And really just kind of building on that as well, maybe start with Ms. Seagram. From your experience, what are the early warning signs that a veteran may be at risk of homelessness, and anyone that wants to weigh in would be appreciated.
Dr. Seagram.
Thank you. That is such an important question, because if we're waiting until they're homeless, in a sense, we've already failed them. Recognizing those who are at risk, certainly when they're coming forward, talking about having challenges feeding their families, family strain. We've learned the importance of having our outreach team going and doing site visits, because there's a tendency for our veterans to underreport the severity of their situation. They might think it's okay, and then we'll go in and we'll see living situations which are very substandard. If we have women or men who are living with intimate partner violence, there's often underreporting there for fear of losing any kind of housing stability. So there are quite a number of issues there. So we've found the importance of actually looking and assessing in person rather than just relying on self-reports, if we can gain the trust and the comfort of them for us to do so. And that can be a very enlightening way of being a little bit more preventative. As well, difficulties with landlords who are threatening eviction, and they're often presented to us as very unreasonable landlords. When we get in and do the dialogue, we'll often need to actually go look at the apartments and find, in fact, there are quite significant reasons for concern, and we become an interface. We may bring in remediation services, extermination services, help with garbage removal, these kinds of things, you know, pets who are not being taken outside for elimination. Things to be able to elevate the level of the living conditions so landlords aren't wanting them out, and really working to, as a bit of a broker between the two, and seeing if we can't keep those relationships longer term and happier, and letting, with permission of the veteran, letting the landlords know we're there as a support. If they are concerned, they can call us and we can run some interference and help getting things in line.
Emily Hilton.
Thank you. Just to follow up to that question, you know, I work in the health field, and we all know that it's if we're ever going to get ahead, we need to focus on, you know, the well-being or the wellness more than the disease itself. In this case, you mentioned, you know, people being at the point they've gotten to homelessness, we've kind of failed them. What services, like, where do you see us needing to be to move things forward in the future so that we see less and less of our veterans ending up on the streets?
Dr. Seagram.
Of course, access to available and sustainable housing is key, but looking at the bigger issues that could also be factoring in the severity of the mental health injuries, engagement with community, degree of isolation, all you need to do is walk into a veteran's home and notice that, we had one fellow, he'd been prepping for 5 years of food. And when we look at that level of severity, we realize, okay, we really need to tread carefully and gently and work to build that trust. So decreasing the isolation, regaining trust, addressing the moral injury that often can contribute to the alienation, the isolation, and increasing that community engagement, both within the veteran community and with the general community in large. So, when they'll come in, we'll have them with individual counseling, we'll have the group programming, we'll do the outreach services, and we'll also, after they've done all those services, walk with them as they try to breach that gap into community, whether it's just community engagement, volunteering, or working.
Emily Hilton.
Very much for sharing that. A question to Veteran Affairs Canada. Veterans often face unique challenges like PTSD or service-related injuries. How do mental health challenges and addictions intersect with housing insecurities for veterans, and how are supports tailored to meet those complex needs?
Mr. Drame.
Thank you for the question, Emily. So when we do transition interviews, or we are introduced to a veteran, or the veteran calls for the first time, and when we look at our veteran population that are at risk of being homeless, there's a lot of intersectionality there, and we know that mental health, addiction, financial circumstances or constraint are all part of the homelessness. Now, when we've identified after a transition interview or after a screening with a veteran, we always make sure they are referred to the available programs that they have to try to build that security net around them when it comes to their mental health, whether that is referring them to a specialist. We do work with partners as well within the communities most of the time to allow them to continue gaining that service and treatment within their community to protect actually their well-being, and also the fact that we don't want them to be out of their communities. It's easier sometimes when they're getting services within the community. We also have the case management plan. That case management, working with the family of the veteran, if they do have family, to protect actually, because and there has to be some willingness of the from the veteran as well to participate in the program that we are offering, and to collaborate with families, because sometimes you can have a veteran that whether that is because of their mental condition or addiction, they don't participate in our services. Having that connection with their community or social worker outside of Veterans Affairs Canada or a family member help us connect back with the veteran to bring them back on track and continue with the service that we're trying to offer them.
Emily Hilton.
Thank you for sharing. One final question from me to Ms. Seagram. Landing Strong's mandate is to support veterans with operational stress injuries find their place in their community. If you were speaking to the federal government right now, what would you tell them is required for you to enhance your service and ultimately to achieve your mandate as best as possible?
Dr. Seagram.
Thank you. I love that question. We spend an inordinate amount of time trying to secure stable, ongoing funding, and that is not necessarily the best use of our resources. There's not necessarily security from grant to grant or year to year of how we can serve our population, and a lot of what we can ask for is dependent on differing governmental priorities from year to year. So some kind of core funding and awareness of and a capacity for resource building. So we do a lot of training of graduate students, training to ensure the base of support for working with people with PTSD or trauma is steadily increasing. Supports for that, supports for organizations such as ours in just covering things like the cost of the rent and the heat. I would love to see us being more proactive and investing in some housing options locally. For example, we were looking at a large building downtown and got quotes and things, then it would be wonderful to be able to renovate places like that and have something close to home where we could be housing people and have those wraparound services attached to the housing. Just housing alone for our population is not sufficient. We really need to look at the mental health support and addiction support that's required to make that a successful outcome.
MLA Hilton with 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Thank you very much. And like those are the moments like in committee that, you know, really hit you and you can take something away. So thanks so much for sharing that. A question for opportunities in social development. We've heard about the success many shelters have had in implementing wraparound supports for individuals experiencing homelessness. Can you tell us more about what you mean by wraparound supports, how they are delivered, who delivers them, and why they are important? And if we don't get to finish this now, maybe in our extra time we can continue that.
Ms. Smith, yeah, you have 60 seconds to start.
So if I have 60 seconds, I will quickly pass to Sid LePage, who will speak very quickly about that for you.
Ms. LePage?
Yes. So the wraparound supports that we're talking about is first making sure someone's basic needs are met. So our service providers make sure that they have access to meals, food, emergency shelter. And then it's important to find out what the individual story is. Everyone comes with their own story of when they enter into homelessness. So what supports do they need? Do they need referrals to addictions, mental health, primary care? We also are lucky enough to have 78 housing support workers funded across the province. And so oftentimes they'll be referred to housing support workers to either help them find housing or to maintain their housing, similar to what was spoken to here today, making sure that they...
Order. Apologies. We finished that preliminary round of questioning, and we will now do the second round, which will be a total of 16 minutes, with 4 for the NDP, 4 for the Liberal Caucus, and 8 for the PC Caucus. MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Chair. This government is banked on a new supply of market housing, and lots of units are getting built. But the fact is that that housing is out of reach of most Nova Scotians. And for people living on the margins, that market housing is even further out of reach. This government is not investing in affordable non-market housing. And the projects that they have earmarked are slow to come and slow to build. And I point this out because this puts enormous pressure on public housing as the option of last resort for deeply affordable housing for not only for veterans facing homelessness, but Nova Scotians facing homelessness as well. And I raise that because the public housing wait list has risen by more than 1,200 people in just over 8 months and now sits at over 8,000 people. So my question to Ms. Smith is, given that a huge number of people currently waiting for public housing, what steps are being taken to ensure veterans, like many others, aren't left waiting years for a safe and affordable home at the time that the supply of new housing is simply out of their reach?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you for your question, MLA Wozni. So I would again defer to some of my colleagues to come and speak from the Department of Growth and Development to speak more broadly about the work that they're doing in affordable housing specifically. However, in the past 4 years, we have developed and created more than 700 supportive housing units here in Nova Scotia, building upon the almost 400 that were here previously, which has meant that we've been exceeding targets for the development of supportive housing. Supportive housing is housing that generally does request a pay of a very deeply affordable rent. In some cases, there is no rent within those units, but that would be the minority of those units. And we also have streams in partnership with the Public Housing Agency for individuals experiencing homelessness to get on the wait list and quickly get access to those public housing units as well. So those are 2 of the measures that are currently in place through the development of the work around homelessness and supportive housing under OSD.
MLA Woosney.
It's Wozni. We've heard testimony from both Veterans Affairs Canada and the Department of Opportunities and Social Development that there's significant willingness to action projects to support veterans experiencing homelessness and to prevent veterans from experiencing homelessness. We also have testimony from credible, long-standing organizations that provide services to veterans in Nova Scotia that are positioned to be the operators of dedicated housing for veterans in Nova Scotia. And so I guess with the time that I have remaining, I'd like to know what both the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Department of Opportunities and Social Developments intend to do collaboratively to empower organizations like those present today to be the operators and holders of veterans dedicated housing in Nova Scotia in the immediate future.
There's 25 seconds. Mr. Drame or Mr. Kendall. Drame.
Yeah. What I can commit to is that I'll talk about Nova Scotia specifically. We have a dedicated team working collaboratively with other organizations, including Provincial, to move forward the homelessness situation within Nova Scotia.
Perfect timing. We will now move to the Liberal Caucus with MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I may have missed this, so I apologize. I'm just kind of looking for a breakdown. Do you find that you're seeing higher levels of homelessness amongst our veterans in particular regions of the province?
Mr. Drame.
Yeah, I have numbers for Nova Scotia. The nation's number, or within Veterans Affairs Canada, I cannot break down by province, but I can tell you within Nova Scotia we have currently identified and that number varies from one day to another depending who's at risk when you talk to them or if you find a solution. We are between, as I said earlier, 44 to 50 veterans within Nova Scotia, and they are mainly concentrated within the Halifax region.
MLA Mombercat.
Thank you, and thank you for that. And if possible, through you, Madam Chair, if you could present that if you could provide that information to the committee, that would be great. Just information for us to have as a resource. No, it's a great question because housing is an issue really across the province when it comes to whether it's in Halifax or Cape Breton or rural areas. So I was curious on that. I guess I don't have much time, so I'll just ask this question to the department. Based on this meeting today, it was a great conversation. What is one of the key takeaways for the department moving forward after having this conversation today about how we can support veterans better, how we can help transition them easier to the workforce? I always look for a takeaway from these committees. They're important. As my colleague said, I had the privilege of serving as chair of Veteran Affairs Committee for a number of years in my earlier days here. So it's important to have that conversation. So my question through you, Madam Chair, to the department is, what is one of the key takeaways for the department today after listening to the conversation and the questions from the committee?
Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much for the question, MLA Mombercat. So there are two things maybe that I'll speak to about taking away. And the first is continuing to build the relationships. Myself, I'm only a year in the position with the department, so continuing to build relationships with my colleagues here will be really essential. Those relationships, though, already exist within members of the team. And the second piece will be continuing to do the work that we have been doing in terms of ensuring that service providers, the folks who are in communities delivering the work, the services and supports around supportive housing, transitional shelters, that they also have those very important and critical relationships with our key partners, including those experts who are here with us today. Thank you.
MLA Mombercat with a minute.
The minute, okay. Well, I won't have time for questions, but I'll stop. I'll finish by just thanking our veterans in this province and across the country. As I said earlier, these are people who step up in the best and worst of times. They are proud every day to wear that uniform to represent Canada. We've seen firsthand the work that they do here in our communities across Nova Scotia and around the world. And this is a very important topic, and I'm really glad that we could have the conversation today, because this is something I see in my local office. We deal a lot with veterans and their families, and we need to continue to have the conversation so that we can ensure we're doing whatever we can, not only to support veterans find secure housing, but the other supports that are necessary as a result of these people who stepped up big time to support us, our families, and our country. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MLA Mombriket. Perfect timing. We will move back to MLA Hilton. Did you want Ms. LePage? Do you need the question re-asked, or are you're good, Ms. LePage?
So I was talking to you about the need for housing support workers to support our individuals that are experiencing homelessness, to either find accommodations, and the most important part as well, as we heard today, is that housing is only one part of the process. It's the wraparound services that our service providers provide that allows that tenancy to be successful, allows that person to gain a sense of independence. The other kind of wraparound services that we provide through our service providers is trustee services. So if somebody is moving into the community or in the community, they're able to have someone to help support them to pay their bills and to do some financial literacy work. And I think the key thing is to remember that all individuals have an individualized story. And so for them, the supports they need are different. So basically it is tailored to them so that their needs are met, whether they have experienced homelessness for a short period of time or chronic. It may be all the same supports required.
Thank you. I will move to MLA Stolvik.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one quick question for Ms. Lawther. How are federal rent supplements calculated? In other words, do they vary by region, if it's Halifax versus, say, if it's Cape Breton or any other area?
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you for that question. So the rent supplements that we have through the Veterans Homelessness Program, they are based on median rents across the country. So we do a calculation and look at the veteran's income. If they are spending more than 30% of their income on rent, then they could possibly be eligible for a rent supplement. The rent supplement that we provide is based on the median rent. So for example, if somebody's rent is $1,800, but the median rent is only $1,600, then the rent supplement is based on that $1,600. So it's the median rents that really dictate the amounts.
MLA Robichaud, 5.5 minutes.
This question is for Veteran Affairs Canada. Could you give me examples of some of the organizations that have been supported through the Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund that specializes in supporting veterans nearing or currently affected by homelessness?
Mr. Kendall.
As mentioned earlier, I believe there's been 29 organizations that have had money from the Veteran Wellbeing Fund. Some of those organizations, I believe, might be here today that receive some money. There's organizations in Alberta. I could allude to Homes for Heroes received money. I think Veteran House Canada perhaps received money. Good Shepherd in Toronto received money. So there's different organizations across the country that receive money. Upwards of, I believe it was a little over $10.3 million on the 29 organizations.
MLA Robichaud.
Follow-up question for Veteran Affairs. Being a national organization, does your organization observe consistency in regards to veteran needs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction? It would be interesting to see the difference between or throughout.
Mr. Keedwell.
Can he repeat that question, please? Sorry, I couldn't hear.
MLA Robichaud.
Yeah, certainly. So being a national organization, does your organization observe consistency in regards to the veterans' needs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction?
Mr. Keedwell.
Do you want to answer that one?
Mr. Keedwell.
We might have to come back to that. I won't have the answer right today.
Emily Robichaud.
Do you have something?
I'd like to pass on my time to Emily Wong.
Emily Wong with 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and I believe this is a question for Veterans Affairs as well. I know that operational stress injuries don't just happen when one's on deployment. They often happen in training exercises at home as well. But more specifically around if one is deployed and when the deployment is finished and they return to Canada, what is the procedure for really assessing anybody and everybody that comes back? And then if it is deemed that there is an operational stress injury, whether it's considered PTSD or something different, to connect them to services that they may require.
Mr. Drummond.
Thank you for the question, Emily. VAC start dealing with veterans when they release from the military or they're about to release. So when the veteran is released, in this case for medical reasons, and during the interview, the screening period, throughout the questions that are asked, the employee or staff come to conclusion that they went through, they suffered from a specific illness or injury, then they're referred to potentially applying for a disability benefit. And applying for a disability benefit includes providing a record of service, going through a medical assessment to have a specific diagnosis that could be PTSD or something else. And based on that, there's a decision rendered on disability benefit.
Emily Hilton.
Thank you very much. Another question for Ms. Seagram. You seem to be my favorite person to ask today. I appreciate all the answers. Your organization has been a recipient of the Veteran and Family Wellbeing Fund and now the Veterans Homelessness Program. From your perspective, and I kind of already asked you that, and what would be the one ask, but what are the biggest gaps that still remain in the supports available for veterans transitioning to civilian life?
Dr. Seagram, with just over a minute.
I think looking at streamlining services, recognizing that those at risk for homelessness are a particularly vulnerable population and probably need to be dealt with somewhat differently than veterans across the board. If we can have ways of fast tracking, and right now they do have a redlining, but looking at even systems and procedures and saying, how can we fast track these most at risk, and making sure we get them through with the supports they need as quickly as possible so they can access it barrier-free, that would be particularly important.
Emily Hilton.
I think maybe I'll ask others on the board to weigh in on what gaps still remain. What do we're closing out our time here for question period. What are the things that we could do provincially but really federally to move the work forward?
Dr. Drummond, or Mr. Drummond,
Doctor,
26.
thank you.
Changing everybody's status
Thank you,
today.
Emily. What I can say to that is, I think collaboration with different organizations when it comes to information sharing. I think that is crucial. For instance,
Order. And apologies to cut you off, but we have wrapped up the second round of questioning. So at this point, I would like to invite the guests, the witnesses, to give closing remarks, and I'll begin with Ms. Smith.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the committee for the opportunity to join for the conversation this afternoon and for the very thoughtful and compassionate questions that are coming forward on a very sensitive topic as it relates to veterans and homelessness in Nova Scotia. We do know that there was a lot of really great work that is happening right across the province in communities and with system partners. And there is a lot more to do as well to ensure that we are there to support the most vulnerable Nova Scotians and those who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. And in that work to do, we do know that our communities are there with us, and we've been very fortunate to build upon the work that they have been doing, and that will continue to include strengthening relationships with our service providers as it relates to also the work that's happening with the experts in the spaces around veterans and homelessness here. So thank you very much.
Dr. Seagram.
Thank you. I think I'd like to start by just expressing my gratitude for the opportunity to be present in conversations such as these. We as an organization are experiencing increased engagement and involvement of our politicians, whether it's locally or provincially, federally, and really are very happy to be having those kind of dialogues. I'm seeing interorganizational cooperation and agreements being formed, partnerships being formed, which are very powerful, because ultimately if we operate in silos, we will limit and truncate what we can do. So I'm thrilled that we're moving in these directions of increased collaboration and putting party lines aside, in a sense, for serving the greater cause, which I believe we're doing more effectively than we were doing in the past.
Thank you. Mr. Dreme.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I quickly just wanted to mention, first of all, thank you, MLAs, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to our colleagues around the table here. I think we work very well collaboratively to advance this cause. I also wanted to mention that there's a VAC assistance line where every veteran can call when they're in crisis with 24-hour 7 line where they can call to seek services, and they can go up to 20 hours of mental health support when they need per case or per situation. I'm currently a acting director for community engagement, and I think I absolutely want to continue engaging with MLAs and partners to whether homelessness, but to veterans cases. One of the things that we do is partnering with organizations to advance different causes, especially marginalized veterans. So I'll be available later if you have any questions or how we can collaborate together for the future. Thank you.
Ms. Lawther.
Thank you. I would just like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you for your questions. I do just want to kind of touch back a little bit to one of the questions earlier about how we can catch veterans, that are at risk before they become homeless, or the things to look for in transition. And I've been saying this for a number of years, but the men and women who join the Canadian Armed Forces, most of them do so as basically children. 17, 18, 19 years old, and they don't even know who they are yet. And they go to basic training and they're basically stripped down of everything they know or believe in and turned into soldiers, sailors, air people. But then at the end of their career, they don't get that same training to become civilians. So that is something that I think is not really looked at as a cause of homelessness, but it does go to the difficulty in transition. We know a lot of veterans who they get out and they're used to their chain of command telling them when to go get a haircut, when to go to their dental appointment, and then they get out and they're floundering. So I think that's a little bit of an overlooked reason for people struggling when they transition out of the military. I think that they're at the end of their career, there's a little bit more that could be done to prepare them for life in civilian world. Again, thanks for having me.
Well, thank you all very much. This was a really good conversation, and happy to be able to facilitate and hear some of the responses from our witnesses today. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the committee for joining us here in our legislature. But at this point, we do have a little bit of committee business, so you are now free to leave, and we will give you a couple minutes to get your things together. Do you want to? We'll do a 2-minute recess. Order. I call the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs back to order. We do have a little bit of committee business like I had indicated, and we'll go through it in the order on the agenda. First up was piece of correspondence from Mr. Harold Davis, founder and president of the Persian Gulf Veterans of Canada. He has requested to appear before the committee to present on the recognition of Persian Gulf vets. Is there any discussion on that piece of correspondence? MLA Wozni.
Thank you, Chair. I note that the request proposes a date in 2026, which is quite some distance off in the future. So I'm not sure if the person making the request is only interested in appearing at that point in time, or if we are going to, I'm not disagreeable to an invitation to appear before the committee in advance of that date, but it's not clear to me whether or not, it seems to me a very anchored and a very specific point in time meeting request. And of course, we don't meet typically in the month that the individuals requested a meeting.
So because we've just done our agenda setting and we don't meet all that frequently, I think that probably the indication of 2026 was that would be when it would come around to our next agenda setting. So if one of the parties would like to put it on that next agenda setting, that could be how we could handle that. The next committee piece of correspondence the committee received was from Mr. Barry Pitcher, CEO of Commissioners Nova Scotia, offered to hold a meeting in their facility in the Bedford Commons. Is there any discussion on that piece of correspondence? Mr. MLA Wozni.
Thank you. I'm just curious as to whether we have advice from staff about the feasibility of holding a committee meeting off-site. I know committee meetings are televised on Ledge TV. It's possible sort of the broadcast of the meeting could occur off-site, but I'm not sure whether that capacity exists. I'm just wondering what staff has to say to us about agreeing to such an invitation.
So I'm getting advice from the clerk, and if this was something that, again, another top at the agenda setting was something that the committee would like to entertain, it wouldn't be televised, but it could be in a transcript enhancer. That would be all, and that could be brought up again at the next agenda setting. So the final piece of correspondence is Mr. Joel Blanchard, founder and owner of Vet Cans Incorporated, has sent a follow-up letter regarding a meeting had with a couple of the committee members, namely myself as chair and MLA Palmer as well. So is there any more discussion on his piece of correspondence? Seeing none, next on the agenda is the approval of our annual report for the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Did everybody have a chance to look it over? And is there any additions, errors, or comments that you would like to make on that? MLA Hanson.
Is this the time where I can put forward my motion? Right. So I have a motion that I'd like to put forward based on the information that we heard today from folks. You know, because we know that it's a complex issue, and veteran homelessness is...
Sorry to interrupt, MLA Hanson. First, we need a motion. I thought you were indicating to make a motion to approve the annual report. MLA Hanson.
No.
Is there a member that would like to make a motion to accept our annual report? MLA Hilton.
Thank you. I'll move the report be accepted as presented.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion is carried. MLA Hanson.
Thank you. Different motion. I would like to put forward a motion on veteran homelessness. Whereas more Nova Scotians are struggling to find housing they can afford, and homelessness is increasing across the province, whereas the primary reason why veterans become homeless in Halifax is because they can't keep up with the cost of their housing, and we know that that's a problem. and it also extends into rural areas. Whereas nationally, a quarter of the veterans who require support from Vets Canada are Nova Scotian. And whereas the government could help Nova Scotians by building more non-market housing, closing the fixed-term lease loophole, and creating a permanent rent control tied to the Consumer Price Index, therefore, I move that the Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs write to the Departments of Growth and Development, Opportunities and Social Development, and Service Nova Scotia requesting that they work together to build the homes we need to get veterans back into housing, institute renter protections to keep them in their homes long-term, and report back to this committee about this work.
Is there any questions regarding the motion? Any comments? MLA Hilton?
Thank you very much, and I think it's important that we kind of reflect on what we've heard here today. Many of those issues outlined in the motion were discussed here by our presenters, and it was, very clear that housing, although part of the issue is not the overall issue, and the need for complete wraparound supports. And as we know, the care and support of our nation's veterans is mainly the responsibility of the federal government. And this government has made historic investments in things like affordable housing. We've invested 10 times the budget of previous governments to the amount of $283 million. And between the time frame of January 23rd, 2023 and May 2025, we've seen an increase in housing startups to the tune of 125%. With housing completions also up 81%. So, this government recognizes the need for veteran support, and we will continue to use our platform to encourage the federal department to engage on these issues. But on the matters we are responsible for, we have a plan, and the plan is working. We are seeing that specifically in my hometown, we have 120 housing startups at the present time. The information is available from any department already, and therefore we wouldn't be supporting this motion, but we would support a motion to send a similar letter to the federal government to encourage building more homes for veterans, since it is in the it's strictly under the federal jurisdiction.
MLA Wasney.
Yeah, I want to speak in favor of the motion. Before these veterans were veterans and the purview of Veterans Affairs Canada, they were Nova Scotians. Mm-hmm. And we've heard a lot of talk, particularly from Progressive Conservative Caucus members, about how deeply we value the service of our veterans. It leaves a very sour taste to think that a government with a supermajority would be content to expect the federal government to be the only actor at work supporting veterans when it has within its purview the ability to call on provincial resources that could be mobilized to provide solutions to veterans in addition to those that the federal government through Veterans Affairs provides. So I think it would be a shameful decision of Progressive Conservative Caucus members to vote against this motion, when really what we're asking for is a report about what a number of government departments provincially can be doing to be part, not a replacement, of the solution that needs to happen on behalf of veterans, of whom this committee heard we have a disproportionate number here at home to care for. So I strongly urge all members of the committee to support the motion.
Is there any other? MLA Wong.
Thank you, Chair. I deeply, deeply disagree with MLA Wasney's characterization of our caucus as not supporting veterans. This government has always, this PC caucus has always, and will continue to support our veterans. Veterans Affairs.
Order. We have, the time for the committee meeting today has lapsed. As you know, we're going into legislature on Tuesday, so our date and topic for the next meeting is yet to be determined based on the length of the session. This meeting is adjourned.